when I stopped comparing, when I stopped worrying, is when those things started to happen, when my business blew up, when my podcast blew up. Because I think sometimes when you're so worried about what other people are doing, you try and be them instead of being yourself. I just said recently, I don't even know if I said this on a podcast or I said it to somebody, there's millions of people right now.
This is Scratch Your Own Itch, the one show that delivers the conversations that we're afraid to share, but need to. This show is all about creating a life worth living. I'm Logan Tyler Nelson, and I'm your host. So, you're going to hear conversations with creators and entrepreneurs talk about what they do, their current and past traumas, how they became who they are, and what they are truly curious about. This is the show where we talk about the things we think about a lot, but need to talk about more. Please take note that this show is not a substitute for actually creating a life worth living, because this show will stir your beliefs, make you question what it means to create a life worth living. So my promise to you is to always give you one question to answer for yourself today, to start turning your dreams into a reality. So, my curiosity question for you is, have you ever thought to yourself, I want to start a podcast, but all the good ideas are taken up and it's too crowded? Okay, let me ask you this again. Have you ever thought to yourself, I want to start a podcast, but all the good ideas are taken up and it's too crowded? Well, if you have, I want to let you know that you're not alone. And if you have had this thought, I want you to know that once you have this thought, let go of it. Because if you've dreamed of not only making a podcast, but a podcast that stands for something more than just money, but true meaning, that just isn't a means to make $1 million and saying goodbye to your 9-to-5 job, but something that is truly trying to scratch your own itch, then this episode is made for you. Because my guest today is the none other, the one and only Justin Schneck. Justin has been named a top 8 podcaster to watch in 2018 by Inc.com and chosen as an icon of influence in the new media space. What started out as a way to connect with top people and to inspire others has become a way of life for Justin. Now getting played in over 100 countries every single week, he is able to make a greater impact than he ever could have imagined. And this too is possible for you. You know it is. You just gotta keep on being persistent. So in this conversation, we're going to talk about how to stay persistent, how to get your podcast on a top rated show, and how to keep your message meaningful and how it can trump that over money any day. So without further ado, I want you to introduce yourself to the one and only Justin Schneck. Hey, Justin, man.
Yo, what's up, brother? Thanks so much for that intro. So you almost had it perfect. You pronounced my last name as Schenck, like a prison shank. But here's the fun part. About 99% of the world messes it up. So I was on a mutual friend of ours, Jeremy Ryan Slate's podcast, and he also spelled it wrong. And so I have this joke of, if you Google my name spelled incorrectly, you'll probably find out more about me if you Google it correctly. So you're just one of the many. So, but other than that, man, I appreciate you having me on. I'm really excited about what you're doing here with the podcast, and that intro was absolutely perfect for some of the things I want to talk about with you today.
Dude, thank you so much, Schneck. Gosh, I suck, dude. I'm sorry. I want to not ever mess up your name again. It's Schenck, right? You said Justin
Schenck, like prison shank.
Yeah.
They'll never forget it. Yeah.
gosh, man, I feel like we started off on it's like, like you meet someone and they just told you your name like 2 seconds ago, and you go, oh shoot, what's your name again? Man, I'm having that moment right now.
Story of my life, man. It's story of my life. I'm the exact same way. I've actually introed people onto my show, and as I was introing them, I forgot their name, so I just didn't say it. So you're not the only one, so we're good to go, man.
I love it. So, all right. The mission of the show is to really scratch your own itch, which means that you have a problem and you're solving this problem. But at the same time, you're solving it for other people and you're making a business out of it. So when I ask you that question of what is it that you are solving for yourself, but at the same time solving for other people?
That's a really good question, actually. And it kind of makes you think, right? And so for me, the podcast was formed for the idea of the podcast was one thing, and when it formed, it became something else, right? And I found that this was a vehicle for me to deliver the message that I'm meant to deliver. And I think what I do with my business, which is a podcast production and coaching business, where I help other people get their messages out there through podcasting, I help other people do that as well, right? And so I have one rule: I don't work with people who are doing it selfishly. I don't work with people who are only doing it for money. I work with people who have a purpose and a passion behind what they're doing. And so I think what I'm doing in podcasting for myself and also for other people is I'm giving them the vehicle to help the world with whatever it is they want to help the world with, by creating this amazing thing for them that 5-10 years ago, we wouldn't have that ability. And so, I feel blessed every single day to have this platform. And so, I think for me, that is really what I'm solving. First I solved for myself, and then now I want to help other people too.
That is so cool, man. So what got you, let's kind of go and back up a little bit and talk about, I don't want to just be like a copycat, and I don't even want to talk about your story, but I do want to talk about how your first interview went, just so we can deliver sort of like, hey, where you've been and this is where you are now.
Yeah. So the first interview was an absolute shit show. I actually, we're talking about introductions, right? So it was an author was our first episode. It was a female entrepreneur, and she was an author. And when I was introducing her, I used to like record the intros during the recording like you did. And I mispronounced the name of the book and was completely wrong with a couple other things, and so it was just absolute crap. I used to have a co-host with the show for the first 62 or 63 episodes. I don't remember the number. And so, with that being said, it was a completely different ballgame what it was then to what it is now. And I think just consistency and practice, and then over time, as the podcast became my own instead of mine and my co-hosts, it became easier just to have great, authentic, real conversations with people. So the biggest jump was I became a really good interviewer. And so when I first started, it was awful. I was so nervous no matter who I talked to. And by the way, the woman I interviewed on the first episode, I've known for years. And so it wasn't even like I should have been nervous. But I was, because I was like, I really got to do this the right way. But I found that if I'm authentically myself, everything starts to kind of work itself out, right? So my big story of like where the absolute rock bottom on the podcast was for me, I think it was episode 5. We had a guy named Brian Scudamore on the show, who's the CEO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Like, it was like super early on. We got this big name, and I was like, wow, like this is crazy. And I was so nervous that it's hands down, it's the worst episode I've ever recorded in my life. You could hear how nervous I was. You could hear how nervous my co-host was. And there was zero content. Like, there was nothing good coming from it. And so I think that the lesson in that is like, you can be really bad at something, but with practice and persistence, you can get better as you go along.
Hey friends. So let me ask you real quick. Are you someone who's trying to get more visibility, who's trying to be in front of the crowd? Well, if that's you, I want to let you know that first of all, you're not alone. Second of all, if you want to get on more podcasts, or ones that actually scratch your own itch, meaning maybe you have a book, or a business, or maybe you do speaking, or if you don't yet do speaking, maybe you can, and maybe you'd love to. Well, I put something together for you, And in this little giveaway, I'm going to show you how to pitch yourself or podcast and how to actually be professional when you show up so you can be the next authority in your niche. So you can start scratching your own itch. I know what it's like to build something, create something, and then there just be crickets. No one wants that. You need to be seen. You need to be heard because you have a message to share. A message that is worthy of hearing. Podcasts nowadays, more than ever, are being consumed by people. And guess who's actually learning the knowledge that's being shared? It's podcast listeners. It gives you a license to be an authority in whatever area you really dream of being an authority in. So if this at all starts to give you a little itch to scratch, just email Logan at logantylernelson.com. Again, that's Logan at logantylernelson.com. Yeah, progress is only contained or obtained, not contained, obtained by practice. I mean, really, I think a lot of people, they see success quotes all day. Consistency leads to success, or, you see the truth bomb of, you don't need perfection, you just need progress. And it's really weird how, people can know that and not do it though. And so, with your own clients, because you have a business around helping people with their own podcast and coaching people, what do you think the biggest reason for becoming what they call in the podcasting world pod fading? For anyone who doesn't know that, that's just kind of stopping your podcast. So why do people do that? Why do people pod fade?
So I think there's two main reasons. I think number one is they don't realize the amount of work that goes into it. There are times if you actually edit your episode. I mean, an hour-long episode could take upwards of 3 to 4 hours. And so, people don't realize the amount of work that goes in. And they also think when they release it, they're going to get thousands of downloads day one. And that is completely not the case unless you're some sort of celebrity with a large following in the first place. But it's completely not the case. And we were talking before we hopped on this call, and I told you 80 to 85% of podcasts don't do more than 100 downloads an episode. And that's actually something that I just found out, and it blew my mind. But people think that it's just going to blow up. And when they realize that hey, I'm putting in all this work and nothing's coming of it today, they just give up. But isn't that kind of the story of everything that they do in life, right? Oh, I'm going to start working out. I don't have a six pack next week. I quit. I want to learn how to play the guitar. I don't know how to play Stairway to Heaven after a week and a half. I quit. That is the epitome of what everybody does. If they want to get something, they want the reward right away. I feel like that's just the generation that we are. And in podcasting, that is very, very, very rarely the case. And so I would say those are probably the top two reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just our generation. I think it's just humanity. It's our species. It's archaic mind going, if I do this, I want pleasure from it now. And it takes work to actually get an apple from a tree. It's the same thing with podcasting. I'm trying to put in that context just so people realize that in order to get the sweetness of a podcast, it takes emailing some people that you're scared to email or reach out to. And I want to ask you kind of your horror story about maybe you reached out to somebody that you really wanted to be on your podcast, and you reached out to them, and unfortunately it didn't go as well as you planned.
Man, I've been really fortunate with that. And obviously you've listened to my show, and I've been fortunate enough to have some really big name guests on my show, and I'm currently talking with Andy Frisella and his wife to get them on the show, and I'm just really fortunate. There have been plenty of times where they don't respond. Or their assistant nicely says, no, they're busy. And so, I mean, I think it's not really a horror story, but two people that I really want on the show. So this is me putting it out in the universe, because I have yet to get it, that I've actually reached out to and have gotten a response, just not a yes response, is Rob Bell, who he has something called a Robcast, and he's just a phenomenal author and speaker. And the other one's Simon Sinek. So both I've reached out to. The one, when I reached out to Simon Sinek, Schenck, his right-hand man, ended up coming on the show. So I was pretty stoked about that. But again, there's no horror stories. There's nobody that's been super cruel or mean. I mean, I've been ignored, but that's like anything else, right? I've been in sales since I was 18 years old. So I'm used to getting, cold shouldered.
So do you follow up with them at all or not really?
Totally. So here's my method, right? So I write them an email that I've formulated that I share with my clients that works for them too. And I write them an email, and they very, very rarely respond to the first email. And within 3 or 4 days, I just forward that email back to them and say, hey, just wanted to follow up on this. Really looking forward to chatting. And they usually respond to that one. And I've been fortunate. I mean, there have been people. I mean, I've been going back and forth with Gary Vee's right-hand man for months at this point. And so it's just about consistency. It's about persistence. But you got to be respectful too, right? Until you get the no, it's never a no until they say no, not interested. So you can blow me off all you want. You can push me back all you want. You can say, hey, let me get back to you all you want. But I'm going to follow up because I believe my conversation with you is important for my audience to hear. So it's definitely a lot of persistence with it.
I love it. Yeah, I love it so much. Yeah, and to know that you're coming from a heartfelt place, which you do. I've realized that my research shows that Justin, like, you're just not a guy who really does things for money. Like, you just want to do it for what your podcast is known for, the Growth Now movement, to be able to be growing in a space where it's going to be meaningful. So I want to kind of transition a little bit about your story now, I guess, and I call it Scratching the Surface Curiosity Questions, where we're gonna learn more about you. We're gonna make some people out there feel less alone, and cool. So whenever you're ready, we'll get into that.
Let's do it, man.
Awesome. The first question I like to ask is sort of a giving's given question, and it could be a thought that maybe you had that you're embarrassed about having or ashamed about having. Maybe you had it about someone else, or maybe you had it about yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? So I'll say this. I have gotten a lot of accolades because of the podcast, like you'd mentioned in the beginning. The Inc.com article, I've also been listed as a top podcaster by CIO. People invite me to speak on stages. People send me emails from all over the world saying, thank you so much. Your message really resonates with me. All these things I've gotten. And the one thing that I constantly think to myself is, I'm not good enough. Like, why am I in this position to do this? And so, I think a lot of the thing was when I was a little bit younger and I thought, hey, once I get the accolades, I'll think I'm good enough. And then I was like, well, once I do this, I think I'm good enough. Well, then once I do this, I think I'm good enough. But I realized that part of that being uncomfortable and feeling like I'm not good enough for those accolades are part of the reason why I'm successful. And so the times that I beat myself up and say, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And these are things that I carry into all parts of my life, by the way. I carry these into relationships, friendships. And I tend, because of that, I over deliver, right? I over deliver with my coaching clients. I over deliver with my girlfriend, or I try to, I over deliver with my siblings. And so for me, I think that the thought to myself is I'm not good enough for this. And it's something that holds me back a lot of the times, but also it keeps me going, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Like, absolutely. It's that sort of, I posted something on Facebook today. It's sort of like, sometimes the finish line doesn't matter. Like, it's being able to get those small mini wins along the way. And, even though it's in a different context of like telling yourself you don't matter, it's still in the same context of going, yeah, I don't matter right now. And, believing that thought is going to stop me, but knowing that if I help somebody else out, believe that they matter, maybe I do matter. You know what I mean? And sort of like, it's hard to do that. I think it's really hard to do that if I'm listening to you correctly. It is really hard to continually tell yourself that you do matter, because we're so addicted to comparing ourselves. So I want to ask you that question too, is who have you recently compared yourself to that you're like, why am I even comparing myself to that guy? Like, his situation is nothing like mine.
It's funny. This is actually something that I've mastered recently. I'd say over the last year. I've really mastered comparing myself to others, and not doing it. But I mean, I used to all the time. Like I used to look at anybody who had any form of whatever you would call success, and be like, why can't I be that? Why am I not like that? Why is my podcast not a top ranked podcast? Why am I not financially stable like those people are? And the funny thing is, when I stopped comparing, when I stopped worrying, is when those things started to happen, when my business blew up, when my podcast blew up. Because I think sometimes when you're so worried about what other people are doing, you try and be them instead of being yourself. I just said recently, I don't even know if I said this on a podcast or I said it to somebody, there's millions of people right now who are trying their ass off to be like Gary Vaynerchuk. And none of them will ever be successful because they're not Gary Vaynerchuk. Now, can you learn from people and say, yeah, I want to do that? Sure. But if you compare yourself and you try and live their life, you're never going to achieve those things. So to answer your question, my long answer now, I no longer compare myself. And so I honestly can't even tell you the last person I compared myself to from that standpoint.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool that you've achieved that. Especially if you are doing a business where you're running it potentially on just your laptop and you go on social media and you scroll through and you see the highlight reels of everybody on there. And you go, oh, geez, like I see, we were talking about Jeremy, like I freaking compare myself to that dude like 9 times a day and I should not do that. But I do that just because I see his highlights on his Facebook and I go like, hey, I would really that'd be cool to make a branding company like him where he gets thought leaders on other podcasts, and this is why I love the space of podcasting, because you can be honest and transparent, and these are the thoughts I have during the day, and so I want to go into that sort of transparency with you. What is something that you may have shared on your podcast where you felt like maybe it was a little bit too much?
So that's fine. I know you're looking for more, but like the thing is, like I don't think anything's enough. Like I think the importance is sharing a lot. So like I've been through a lot in my life, right? So my dad was in jail for 2.5 years. My dad's also a homosexual who's now married to a man. I was the best man at their wedding. My mom had a 20-year pill addiction. She ended up losing her life a little bit over 2 years ago. And so I've shared a lot on my podcast. And I think that that's the important part, right? Like that's why we're doing this. That's why you have this show. That's why I have my show, is to be vulnerable and be yourself. So I don't think there's ever been a time where like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Because yeah, man, I don't think there was anything, and I don't think there is anything that I wouldn't share openly. Because I think that's why my audience resonates with me, is because I am that open book.
Dude. I love that. See, I love that because I'll be honest with you, man. That's the hardest thing about, I think, having an online business for anybody, is that sort of like you get kind of I guess the word is more so, scammed. You get scammed a lot. And so when you have that person that's so transparent, and that's what's great about your podcast, I think, is you do let out a lot. And I wasn't like looking for like, a horror story or anything like that. So just asking that question, because like a lot of us are scared to get on the podcast and maybe start a new podcast. Why? Because, well, all right, like, I might say something that someone will be offended about, but I always tell myself, like, if I wanted it to literally be nothing in life, I would need to say nothing and do nothing. Mm-hmm. So I just need to be okay with that. Has there ever been anybody that's maybe reviewed your podcast badly, or maybe, messaged you personally and be like, Justin, like, you shouldn't have said that? Like, just for someone to feel less alone if they ever do, encounter that sort of negativity instead of positivity from something that they really care about.
Yeah. So, not necessarily I don't think you should have shared that, but I've had hate emails like, your show sucks. You just rip content from your guests. I would never hire you as a coach because you're not the expert. It's your guests that are the expert. You say too much, you stutter, you talk too fast. I've had all those things, but I think that's part of the territory. Uh, the first time I received one of those emails, I was very offended, and I wanted to reply, and I wrote out this really long email in reply, and I did not hit send. I don't know what stopped me from doing it. I just decided not to hit send, because I realized, like, at that point, what's the point, right? Like, there's people telling me all the time that I'm helping them. So why would I allow the one or two negative feedbacks compared to the hundreds of good feedback? Why would I allow that to affect me? Right. That's just stupid. So it was never any like, hey, you shouldn't share that. I have had one guest who came back to me and said, hey, do you mind taking that one part out where I talked about X? Because there were other people involved. And he goes, I wouldn't care if it was just me, but since there were other people involved, I'd just rather not share it. And I respected his wishes. And I think now farther in the game, I think I've become a better interviewer where that wouldn't happen. But at the same time, like, no, never, you shouldn't have shared that. But definitely, I've definitely received hate mail, man. Like, I think when you're putting anything out there in vulnerability, you're gonna receive hate, and it's usually from people that wish they were you.
Hey, Logan Tyler Nelson here. I would so appreciate it if you took some time to hit the subscribe button. I really want to just honestly live and give. Why? Because I was told when I was young that if you're feeling down, the best way to feel better is by lifting someone up again. So in an effort to make someone feel less alone, please hit the subscribe button so the podcast has a better chance of being found and making someone feel less alone. And if you're feeling down, hey, it can help you. Know that by hitting that subscribe button, you just did someone a huge favor. So thank you for hitting that subscribe button. Yeah, so true. And the thing is like, the creators, the people that are out there actually making stuff, they don't take time to go and like negatively reduce someone else's life just because they feel bad about how their creations are going. Like, no. Like so if people are taking time to do that, it's usually the people that I don't want to like really be around anyway. So,
yep.
That's a great point that you bring up. Like, anyways, I want to go into this question about what do you think is going to make someone's podcast stand out, from the rest? And do you think it's kind of a two-part question? Do you think it's too late in the game to get into podcasting right now anyway?
So to stand out, I think there's a lot in the way of just being yourself. Maybe get creative, play a game with your guests, just do something a little bit different that you can use as sound bites, or niche really far down. Like, if you are obsessed with the clarity of an iPhone camera, go do a podcast about it, because there's other people that feel that way, right? And so I think niching down is super key to help grow your audience, and just understanding, like, I think yours is like, when I think about what you're doing here and what you're creating, a lot of it's like a mental health thing, right? So when you niche down into that topic of like mental health and not allowing the past dictate who you are, or not allowing it to affect who you become, like that's something that you're niching down into. You just have to find a way to verbalize that. And is it too late to get in the game? Absolutely not. Podcast audiences are growing rapidly. I think it's in 2015, something like 14% of Americans listen to podcasts on a regular basis. In 2017, something like 29% of Americans listen to podcasts on a regular basis. And as we get busier and busier as a society, that's just going to grow. When you read my intro, my podcast gets played in over 100 countries every single week, but sometimes it's just one play, right? So the thing is, in all these other countries, podcasting hasn't even really become a thing yet. It's really America, United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia, really the English-speaking countries. And the other ones just haven't really gotten into it yet as much. And so what you'll see is, as they start to tap into it more often, they start to create content, there's also more opportunity. So now is the time. As long as you are passionate and understanding of like, this is what I want to create, then now is the time.
Dude, that's excellent advice. Like, no joke, seriously amazing advice. Also, like, wow, you don't realize that it is it's sort of the universal law. When you keep seeing the things that keep jumping up, you go, oh, geez, everyone's doing this, right? Like, for me, like, cause I'm a podcast listener, I just go, oh, everyone's starting a podcast, right? or if you're a YouTube watcher, you go, everyone's got a YouTube channel now. It's like, no, but you don't like, or it's that sort of a universal law. But, what is, I would be crazy to not ask this question to you, being a fellow podcaster. Who is someone that you love? They can be living or they can be no longer around, that you would love to sit in front of you and just ask one question to, and what would that question be?
I think that I think that it would be my mom. And I think that I would ask her, do you know how much you were loved?
Wow. I lost my mom, and so I would have similar questions. I do 5 minutes a night of just talking into the phone as if she was still alive. And you can, anybody that's listening right now, that if they've ever lost a parent or something like that, knows how cool it is to try to revive your lost family members. Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Justin. I really appreciate that.
Of course, man. I'm sorry for your loss, man. I fully understand the pain. The thing that I've done and the thing that I do every single day and every single week through my podcast is I make sure that, her life wasn't in vain. And it's given me the opportunity and the platform to help other people that may have struggled with the things that she struggled with. I find that talking about it helps me immensely. And so, thank God the podcast happened, because if not, I'd probably be in a really bad spot.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started my show, I always went back to, gosh, I can't start a podcast about mental health because I don't have that certificate. I don't have that certification. I don't have that authority or whatever. And what I realized was, I have perspective though. I have an ear, and I don't have the answers for anyone that's may be struggling with grief or struggling with depression or something like that. What I do have is just an ear to listen to them and hear their thoughts. And, I don't know if there's anything on your chest right now, that you, the listener right now, needs to get off their chest. I prod you to reach out to myself or Justin and, maybe just start sending the conversation. That's just something that maybe, you wouldn't normally share. And that's okay. To be able to just take that chance and that leap of faith. So I'll obviously leave all the information in the show notes, which I usually plug at the end of the show, but I just feel that this is free-flowing conversation just to do that. So anyways, Justin, I want to ask you this question. I think you kind of answered it before, but I would like to clarify it is what's a thought or a belief that you had that was something that you totally believed 5 years ago, but now if you told yourself the same belief, you would kind of laugh at and scuffle at and just be like, wow, can't believe I thought those things.
So I don't know if I did answer this at least in this way, right? So I set a goal in 2017, and you and I talked before I hopped on this call, before we hit record or whatever. And I had said that or you talked about how you're not money driven, and neither am I. And I set a goal in 2017 that I thought was going to be outlandish. And that goal was to feel like I belonged at the table of the people that I idolized, that I belonged at the table of the people that I interviewed. And that was my goal. And I knew that if I reached that goal, then the financial things that I needed to happen to pay bills, to create those relationships would happen. And by the end of the year, the Inc.com article hit, all these other accolades, the icon of influence in the new media space happened, all these things, right? And in 2018, I set the goal of I want to be at the table. I want to sit at the table, not just feel like I belong. I want to sit at the table. And already, what is this, March? Are we in March right now or April? I don't even know. I think we're in April. Yeah, April.
Yeah.
And so, in April already, I've doubled my business. I work with celebrities. I work with billionaires. These are people that I'm at the table with, and these are people that I have drinks and meals with. And so if I told myself 5 years ago that you are going to be at that table, I wouldn't have believed it. But now I'm living it.
Dude, virtual freaking high five and bro hug. I love it, dude. Ah, that's so awesome. And I hope it doesn't just give someone a little bit of inspiration that hears that right now to start something that they're really thinking about doing. Like maybe it isn't podcasting, but maybe it's that book that you really want to write, or maybe it's that thing that you've already started, but you just don't want to really keep working on it because you don't think it will work out. Like hearing your story just now, like gives me so much good feels. Like I'm in an absolute joy right now. And I usually don't say that a lot just because honestly, like I'm very alone during the day and do a lot of things on my own time. And I don't like, I'm not like saying like, oh God, my life sucks. It's just like, honestly, like I hang out by myself a lot right now being new to town. But anyways, I just had to get that off my chest. I want to go into 2 more questions, man, and because I know that I'm trying to keep these a little bit shorter so people don't take their entire like week to hear these things anymore.
For sure.
So I just got 2 more questions. The first question I'd like to ask is, how can anyone that's listening right now to this right now, Justin, support you and your dreams and your goals? How can they get to you?
Yeah, so I'll do 3 things, right? So first, if they want to check out my podcast, they can search Growth Now Movement wherever they're listening. If they are interested in building a platform, spreading a message, adding to their income, and they need help with the podcast process, they can email me at justin@growthnowmovement.com, or they can fill out the form at beginpodcastingnow.com. Or they can follow me on Instagram, which has now become my favorite platform. So on Instagram, it's at GNM podcast. And I reply to all the messages that I can over there. And please, I encourage people to reach out and share their dreams and their message with me and whatever they feel like it is, because I love hearing it.
100%. Like the thing is though, I didn't make this podcast to just be someone that listens and then goes, oh, I'm going to go hit the next button. And if you do hit that next button and just busy your brain, you're missing an opportunity to make a really amazing friend. And I don't like to use the word mentor anymore. I want you to like make friends with myself or Justin and to really go like, hey, like I'm going to take time to Instagram, Facebook, or tweet about this thing that they said, this quote that they had. Why? Because I want it to be true for my own life. And, I believe in great artists steal, and you're not stealing as long as you just plug in one of us as far as like, taking time to actually quote us. And all right, you may be scared to actually do that. And I want to test you. Are you going to do it? Are you going to reach out to one of us, to start propelling yourself into the life that you want to start creating for yourself? And so the last question I'd like to leave off with is, Justin, is there anything that you wish I would have asked you? And the floor is totally yours.
I think you've done a great job. Like this was a great interview and I appreciate your time. But I think, if anything, like what would be, I think the generic question of what would be your one word of advice, or your one inspirational thing to say. And really for me, look, I would have been least likely to succeed if they had one of those as a senior superlative in high school. At a 1.7 GPA my junior year, didn't get into college. Obviously a mom who had a pill addiction, a dad who was in jail. You write that on a wall and somebody goes, that guy's not going to succeed. But one thing I realized is that it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't even matter where you are right now. What matters is the choices that we make in this moment to move forward and continuously grow. And that's for anybody. And I don't care if you're a billionaire listening to this. I don't care if you're homeless on the street listening to this right now. All that matters is that next step. And that's all we can worry about because the future is unwritten and we have to write it one step at a time.
Oh man, that is so true. Dude, so true. We gotta post that as a meme somewhere with with your face on it. I would love to do that. Well, really, thank you so much, Justin, for taking the time out of your day and spending the time to hang out with anybody that's listening right now. And I'll put all the information that Justin just provided out there, because honestly, this is a guy who that I talked to. He gave me 10 minutes before we even started about just figuring out my wants and figuring out, some way that he can help me. So he's not just here to, promote a book or promote his own business. Like, he's here to really help people out. So when you listen to this person and you do or don't decide, know that you're not deciding on somebody that really cares, that really wants to help people. So decide to work with someone that's incredible at what they do. So if there's an inkling of a little itch to scratch with podcasting, reach out to the man, reach out to me. I don't care. I just want you to get your podcast launched and get out there. But I know Justin's the man at doing this, and he has way more than enough practice to do it. So please don't hesitate. And, thanks again, Justin, for hanging out.
Logan, you're the man. Thanks for having me, brother.
Dude, 100, absolutely, 100%. I'll see you later, man.
See ya.
All right, there's another episode of Scratch Your Own Itch. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to support the show by listening. The biggest compliment you could ever pay me is just by sharing this, because honestly, it doesn't take much, and it feels so good when people create something and take time. And when I see someone take time to create something that really just changed my day, either made me feel less alone, maybe put a smile on my face, made me laugh, made me feel wiser, I always want to share it with the world. Because why? When I share something that resonates with me, why not share it? I mean, that's just kind of the thing that goes around, and it's free. It takes no time at all other than just a click of the button, share, on either Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Any of those social media platforms would be great to share this. So I really appreciate it. And I want to say that anybody who's looking to gain authority or expertise in their area, and they don't want to take another year or year and a half to write a book and wait until that's published, I think the best way is right now is to start a podcast. So if you're at all interested in starting a podcast, if you meet the certain requirements, I would love to help you with a podcast and also get a website going for you as well. And this is not an easy task. It's hard to actually get it done and get it out there. So every now and then we need some help, and I'm here for you. So please reach me at logan@logantellernelson.com if you're interested at all. And don't ever forget, you matter and you're enough.